The after-party suite he promised was ours. The alert landed on our shared calendar at 6:42 p.m. Victory party, donor suite late. It sat there with the smugness of an RSVP that knew what it was wearing. 2 minutes later, Luca texted, "Don't wait up, gonna be a long one, wish me luck red." He only reached for the heart when the rest of the sentence didn't want to be touched. I stood in the kitchen and let the champagne I'd planned for us sweat itself honest. On the television, the anchors rehearsed results that refused to be finished. The neighborhood practiced celebration at a volume that made all the imperfect windows proud. I moved the bottle back into the fridge and told the room we were good men in forgiving times. The room swallowed its opinion. At 7:19, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a message that did. If your candidate is about to win, he picked the wrong floor for prayer. Suite 1903, corner. The view does half the confessing. It was signed with a single letter as if the alphabet owed him rent. E. Ezra had been the campaign's shadow since winter, the strategist you hire when you want victory to look like inevitability. He wore pocket squares that made interns forget to breathe and smiles that made donors forget married. Luca and he had a shared language made of late nights, shared rides and doorways that didn't need introductions. I told myself I trusted Luca the way good partners do and typed anyway. "Why are you telling me?" He wrote back fast. "Because I am tired of being the only person who can see the city from that room." The hotel pretended to be history with its backlit stone and biddable chandeliers. In the elevator, I watched my reflection smooth its mouth and fail. The doors opened onto carpet that wanted to be a compliment. Suite 1903 wasn't locked. The latch kissed the jamb like a choreographed yes. Inside, the room had learned the choreography of expensive forgiveness. The curtains were open to a city that had decided not to be modest. On a table by the window, a silver bucket held a bottle with a ribbon like a truce. Luca stood where the view could claim him, jacket off, tie an undone verb, shirt open one button past reputable. Ezra was 3 steps closer to the sofa, holding a tumbler in a way that suggested both scholarship and sin. He turned at the sound of the door and smiled in the register that makes rooms choose a side. "You took the elevator," he said, as if my choices were a business plan he'd already annotated. "You sent me the invoice," I said. Luca went still the way people do when their body betrays the room before the mouth has a chance at diplomacy. He said my name as if he'd found it on the floor. "Tom, how did?" "Ezra prayed," I said. I answered. Ezra lifted his glass and took the kind of sip that forgives the decision that brought you to it. "You have a knack for timing," he said. "So does he." He nodded toward Luca and set the glass down like a promise he'd already broken. There are a dozen correct choices you can make in a room like that, and not one of them paid rent for my mouth. I crossed to the window and let the city explain itself. The sound below was a complicated yes. In the glass, I saw Luca's reflection of my reflection and the life we'd rehearsed for debate. He came to stand beside me, not touching, the length of air between us the shape of our latest argument. He said, softer than strategy, "I was going to call you when she conceded." "And say what?" I asked. "That victory made you thirsty." He smiled without elevation, the way he smiles at reporters he likes. "That the people we are in public don't get to decide which door we open in private." Ezra sank into the sofa as if he owned the physics. "You can be angry tomorrow," he said. "Tonight he's a man who helped move numbers and got caught under a light he thinks he owes you. Let him be that without making it a resume." "Tell me why I'm here," I said, and made it sound like a line that would accept revisions. "Because I texted you," Ezra said. Because I've watched both of you try to be good men in a profession that monetizes appetite. Because he looks at you when he says the word we, and I thought that should matter in the room where he almost forgot it. Almost, I said. Luca abandoned the inch of air and took my wrist with the gentleness of a man who has already apologized to your pulse. I didn't bring him up here to do anything I couldn't explain to you, he said. I brought him up to tell him that after tonight, I don't need him to talk to me like fate has a crush on me. I can talk like anything you want, Ezra said, and there was more pity than bite in it. I can also leave the suite and let two men rehearse a better script. The keys on the table, the bottle too. I promise not to use either against you later. He stood. Luca let go. Ezra crossed to me and stopped with a tact I hadn't known he owned. His hand found my shoulder, impersonal as a turn on a dance floor, steady as a second thought. You held him up when I glued the day to his head, he said. I'm not the villain if you don't need one. I'm the man who texts when the balcony has a view worth earning or rejecting. After he left, the room remembered how to be silent without being dramatic. Luca took 2 breaths he didn't know I could count. He moved toward me again like a tide he couldn't afford. I shouldn't have answered his call, he said. I shouldn't have let his voice talk me into a drink and a view. I wanted to show him that the thing he sells isn't the thing I'm willing to buy. I slid my fingers into the undone knot of his tie and held it there. You wanted to be chosen by a room he didn't own, I said, and then you wanted me to break the lock. He leaned into the truth until it had to admit it was being leaned on. I wanted to be caught, he said, not punished, caught. I pulled him in by the silk and kissed him like a man whose argument had run out of choreography. He kissed back with the relief of someone finally speaking in his own dialect. We didn't pretend it was forgiveness, and we didn't pretend it was sin. It was heat saying hello to a body that had missed its name. When his mouth left mine to find the hinge of my jaw, I remembered the first time he'd found it, and the way language had changed its mind for us. My hand slid under his shirt to find skin that had learned the temperature of other rooms. He made the sound he keeps for when a day lets go. We didn't undress. We made a geography of buttons and breath and 100 small yeses that didn't require a jury. He broke away first and went to the table, pouring 2 glasses as if water were an argument worth winning. He passed me one and didn't make eye contact until I'd taken a sip. The glass was cold enough to forgive our mouths. I love you, he said, and he capitalized none of it because he finally meant it. I believe you, I said, because belief is an economy of gestures, not a credit score. He stood so close the city's reflection put us in the same pain. He wants me to be a story he can tell about himself, he said. You want me to be a body that tells the truth out loud. I know which future keeps rent paid. There's another future, I said, where you admit the part of you that enjoys being chosen and the part of me that enjoys being wanted by men who can ruin a room, where we stop pretending we don't like the light and learn how to share it without writing affidavits. You kissed him, he said, and it wasn't a question. His voice did not accuse, it smiled at math. I kissed the light, I said. The man will get his turn if I ever need a villain again. He set his glass down with a gentleness that didn't announce itself. I didn't kiss him, he said, and then because that sounded too clean, I was going to. I let the glass do half the work. I know, I said. I could tell from your mouth it still looks like yours. What happens now? He asked. We go downstairs and tell Victory it can pay for our car, I said. We go home and let the room remember it's not a courtroom. And then we stop putting our names on nights that want to be anonymous. He grinned, wrecked and human. You're good at stage directions. I read them when they finally include me, I said. We left the suite exactly the way we'd found it, except for the heat we'd taught the air, and the two damp places on the glass where we'd turned toward our reflections and decided to mean it. On the elevator down, we stood shoulder to shoulder like men who had not been asked to testify. The lobby's flowers didn't dare to editorialize. Outside, the city's noise stitched itself into a single, complicated verb. We let the driver take us through the corridor of claxons and confessionals. Luca's hand found my knee and stayed there, not kneading, not apologizing, just locating its assignment. He kept it there when my phone buzzed with a new unknown number and a single line. He didn't kiss me. Not my job tonight. I showed it to Luca without commentary. He nodded as if a witness had kept time. At home, the bottle in our fridge was less smug about its potential. I opened it anyway and poured without ceremony. We sat on the floor because chairs felt formal. I told him Ezra had looked at my mouth like a balcony he could afford but preferred not to buy. He told me Adrian had talked about policy like a man who wanted to be named in a book he hadn't read. We didn't pretend we didn't like the attention of orchestras. We did pretend we could become better audiences. Luca's phone lit with messages in the tone of triumph. He put it face down and reached for my wrist again, the pulse there calmer than it was entitled to be. He said he wanted to learn how to choose without making it someone else's job to forgive him. I said I wanted to learn how to be wanted without needing a new mirror delivered every season. He laughed into his palm and said that sounded like a plan, which is campaign for prayer. We slept with an inch of cool between us and let the inch argue itself back into warmth. Toward morning he woke and found me already awake and asked if this counted as a scandal. I said it counted as a night where we let the room be a room and not a podium. He kissed my shoulder like the only platform he trusted. The alert on the calendar for the new day was empty, honest in a way digital things rarely are. I brewed coffee that couldn't forgive and watched him tie a tie he'd earned. He looked at me from the doorway the way he looks at the city before he feeds it a story, and said my name like a location that still existed. I said his back, the way elevators do when they're keeping secrets efficiently. Before he left, he took a photo of our kitchen with the morning leaning in and texted it to me from 10 feet away. Room reserved, he wrote. I saved it because victory doesn't owe us these, because after-parties fade and donors find other wrists, because city glass learns to forget our faces fast. I saved it because there will be other letters from people who like balconies and other nights when heat says hello with better timing, and I wanted proof that what we'd kept wasn't quiet or spotless or virtuous. It was simply ours. Around noon, Ezra sent one more message. You read the view correctly. Tell him not to waste my time being almost ruinous. I typed back, thank you for the air. He replied with a period. Some men know when grammar is a gift. When Luca's victory speech hit the feeds later, I watched from our couch and found the place where his gaze of record slipped for one heartbeat toward nothing in particular, and knew it was toward a window we'd left without a lock. He said the word "we" 3 times, and only 2 of them were about voters. I didn't mind. I like a man who practices plurality in public, and then brings the singular home like a plant he's decided he can keep alive. The evening brought more noise stitched into verbs we didn't have to parse. We walked to the corner for ramen and didn't order cocktails pretending to be alibis. On the way back, he took my hand exactly the way a good man does when he is tired of being called that and would rather just be held. The elevator didn't ask any questions, and we didn't offer any answers. The door to our apartment clicked in the tone of a room that knows it will have to forgive us again. I whispered a promise to the glass panes because they always get there first. Then we let them watch us make a better decision and refused to give them a show.